is now at an extremely high level. So urology is a very, very important field to offer, and now this program may not be able to deliver all of the services that they had hoped. So this is certainly one of the pressure areas at Valley Regional, and again at Soldiers Memorial. I think we need to challenge the government to utilize the operating room that has been revamped and renewed as a state-of-the-art facility, but is currently only being used 3 days a week. And so to have that facility operating 5 days with some types of day surgery and inpatient care that require surgical procedure or investigative procedures using the OR would certainly, again, take some of the pressure off of Valley Regional. In education, like all parts of the province, there is certainly challenges with funding. Dr. Gunn this past year certainly made it known to the government that they have been underfunded now for a considerable number of years, and it has finally reached that critical point where delivery of all of the services, and certainly even one of the new initiatives, is not without enormous pressure. It is great to see the government moving with the reduction of class size to 25, again at the grade 1 level, but now we realize that implementing it may in fact be very difficult due to the amount of money available to the board.
Order, please. Would the honourable member allow for an introduction?
Yes.
Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Human Resources on introduction.
Mr. Speaker, in the Speaker's Gallery today, we have a well-known denturist from the Bridgewater area, Ken Edwards, and I'd ask that the House extend a warm welcome to Mr. Edwards.
We welcome our guest to the gallery today and hope he enjoys the proceedings. The honourable member for Kings West. Thank you.
So while we have those kinds of challenges with funding, with AVRSB, I certainly like today to have a balanced perspective, and it's interesting that in all of the schools in Kings West, there are indeed events to celebrate that have been going on, and I'd like to just go through a few of those schools. The Dwight Ross Elementary School recently received a provincial environmental award through the Waste Recovery Fund for, first of all, becoming a green school early in the year, and with the way, in fact, they've been able to reduce waste on a daily basis in that school. So to get that kind of achievement for a small elementary school is certainly noteworthy. In Pine Ridge Middle School, the teacher there, who will be retiring this year, had his last cultural evening celebrating the Gaelic culture. 6 years ago, there was no such program in the school, and Don Hislop introduced an evening to celebrate Gaelic culture, music, language, and this year he had what was called the last gathering, because for him it will be the last such event that he will orchestrate. And it has brought to our community, I guess, a discovery of the rich Scottish heritage that is local, plus one of the benefits of the annual concert that they hold there is also to invite people from around the province who are able to provide Gaelic music. And in fact, I should point out that the then Minister of Heritage, Honourable Rodney MacDonald, was one of the people, in fact, who helped in the very early years of this particular festival. So this cultural event in the community has grown, and one of the real beneficiaries of this event is the Heritage Village I believe, in Iona, and they have raised over $4,000 through a small little community music and cultural evening for that endeavor. At the school where I taught for 25 years, the school just put on their annual production, drama or musical, usually alternating, and it was great to see former principal Vic Fleury come back and lead the students in another outstanding production this year, the murder mystery, Agatha Christie's Mousetrap, which again was an outstanding production in our school. So our schools continue to provide really outstanding extras, I guess, to the curriculum. The Somerset School, which I mentioned just a few moments ago, has a project there, a pilot project with the Department of, or with the Justice, with the Federal Justice Department, and they've involved a number of partners for the community in delivering this, working towards a more peaceful school. And on June the 3rd, they will have a celebration of some of the achievements with the release of a video in showing the development of student leadership in this particular program. I would also point out that the schools that I have just mentioned, plus all 7 in the riding, had some outstanding performances in the regional science fair, and a number went on to represent their schools at the provincial science fair held recently in Bedford at the Oceanography Institute. This has been a very, very challenging year, in the riding for agriculture. When we have had the BSE crisis, the downturn in the pork industry prices, also the closure of Avon Foods, and these have had a tremendous negative impact. But in the midst of that, of course, we have had a couple of bright spots, and I think it's important to note those as well. And during the BSE crisis, a very small slaughterhouse, Bowlby Meats, I guess accepted the challenge to promote Nova Scotia grown beef as a healthy alternative, since it is almost an organic product, and his kill of 10 animals a week rose to about 30 with just the promotion of the Nova Scotia brand product. So I'd like to commend that business for that endeavor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Energy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and indeed it's a pleasure for me to rise in the House today and take some moments to speak about some of the issues and, more importantly, some of the positive things that are happening within Cape Breton, and more specifically within the great community and constituency of Cape Breton North that I'm so proud to represent. The communities of North Sydney, City Mines, Florence, Little Pond, Alder Point, Pointe-a-Coney, and Little Brador all have a collective spirit that is enhancing and building upon a base that has been provided by our forefathers and mothers, that is providing us with the spirit and gives us the integrity and the know-how to move forward through the challenges and the changes that we face yet again today. Those challenges and changes are not new to Cape Breton. They've been part of our history. But what Cape Bretoners do know is about turning adversity...
Order, please. Now, Minister of Energy has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But the Cape Bretoners are very familiar with turning adversity to opportunity and to making the most of the challenges before us. And in our area and in Cape Breton, we do have problems. We do have challenges, but they're all part of a reality that this government has been responding to and putting forth the real numbers to the real challenges we have, and putting perspective on some of the challenges and the problems that other people would highlight as being in chaos or crises in the region, which I just simply do not accept. I do accept that we do have problems and challenges, and I do accept that government has a role to play in facilitating change and opportunity. But when you look at what's happening just within Cape Breton North, in my constituency alone, when you look at the community spirit, when you see the community revitalization efforts that have been ongoing for the past number of years, It didn't take anyone to identify the problem. It took those in the community to recognize what the problem was and to put a solution and plan forward to address those. And it's been a phase at a time, an opportunity at a time, and it's all been matched by government funding from all three levels to do that. We see new economic opportunities alone in the Northside Industrial Park. Just recently, announcement of up to 100 new jobs at Cape Breton Castings. Cape Breton Castings that's going to be supplying Tesma, a quality employer in the Northside Industrial Park, supplying them with product, but more importantly from individuals from Cape Breton that are growing our capacity to cluster and advance manufacturing, growing our ability to stabilize and build on infrastructure in that park, Mr. Speaker, that it too went through challenging times. When that park was established, there were plants that were put in place, and indeed some of those weren't as successful. But because that infrastructure was there and is there, new opportunities are being realized today because of it. And it's not being realized, Mr. Speaker, because people are sitting back and asking someone else to fix the problem. It's about local companies and business people with vision and those elsewhere that see the potential that Cape Breton has to offer, sees the value and knows the value of Cape Breton workers and the competitiveness that we have to operate not only nationally but internationally and to prove a business case and advance it not only for Cape Breton but indeed to strengthen the Nova Scotia business case, Mr. Speaker. And that's something I've been pleased and very proud to be part of myself. And in the last little while, we've had some debate about what the realities are within the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. While I represent an area that is a significant portion of that on the north side, one that is obviously doing things contrary to some of the perception that's being put out there, and one that indeed will continue to move forward this year as this government moves ahead, so too will my community continue to advance in the efforts for more economic diversification and rebuilding of our economy and repositioning for a stronger future. That is being done, Mr. Speaker, in the face of some of the adversity and the negativity that is being projected within the CBRM.
Order, please. Young member Cape Breton West. On the point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I was wondering if the Honourable Minister of Energy would entertain a very short question.
Minister of Energy, entertain a question.
Well, yes, Mr. Speaker, I will, on behalf of the good member from Cape Breton West.
Member Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A recent meeting I had with Enterprise Cape Breton Corporation officials, it was revealed that the officials from the Cape Breton Regional Municipality issued a letter indicating that they had no desire whatsoever to participate in the Cape Breton Growth Fund and the economic activities related to this initiative. Is the Minister aware of that, and what's his feeling on this particular issue?
Honourable Minister of Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and his question is very timely because I was moving in that general direction of where we are responding to some of the statements that have been made within the CBRM with regards to this government's participation. And as the member was indicating yesterday during an opportunity in this House, he provided some of his perspective about what this government was or wasn't doing, but also the scenario within the CBRM and how Council is responding to some of the issues. And he did highlight something that I do agree with. He did highlight that this government is able to work with the Government of Canada to invest in the Cape Breton Growth Fund, a one-of-a-kind investment fund in the country as a result of our two governments coming together. He did say that it's ironic, or at least noting the fact that the CBRM is having difficulty working with its sister and neighbouring communities that in eastern Nova Scotia are all working together. And you look at what's happening in the Strait area, and you look at the positive momentum they're building in contrast to some of those opinions. When you look at bureaucrats and civil servants able to work together, when you see business and the community coming together, whether that's Chamber of Commerce or individual proponents, working with all these other people, there is a common thread here, and that is there's a criticism of every other level and participant except to look at the municipality itself. And that common thread at some point has to come back to the council chamber and the accountability that they have to the very citizens that we too represent. And our citizens do expect more of us and demand of us, and as the member will get up and say, wherever his differences are with our perspective. And I also noted where he was talking to me about the fact that if you look at the investment we have made through the Growth Fund versus those monies that we put into Sydney Steel in the past to cover operating deficits and the losses that were being suffered, this government recognized that. But he did say that our investment in that was less now than what we actually subsidized before. But there's another reality, Mr. Speaker. Since this government's come to office, there is more money in health care, there is more money in education, there is more money in roads, and indeed we have invested in economic development and diversification in the region. Is there more that can be done? Yes, there is. And will we do more? Yes, we will. And we do it in concert with those that have and share a common vision and understanding that compromise is the basis upon which the political momentum and movement is achieved, not dictating what other levels of government should or shouldn't be doing to facilitate a demand, not just talking about need, but a demand for within the CBRM. And I know other colleagues in this House, it's kind of ironic, Mr. Speaker, that other people would, and the member of the Leader of the Opposition allows me an opportunity as well, Mr. Speaker, to refer to the fact that other members of this legislature who have been told by certain members of council that they don't defeat this government's budget, that they're betraying or turning their backs on the CBRM. The members in this House have tough decisions to make. And one of those decisions is this government the balance necessary for Nova Scotia to receive the benefit of the resources we have available to us? And I think everyone has strived to do that. And in recent commentary, the member, the good leader of the official opposition, was referred to as a kinder, gentler version of Cecil Clark. Well, I think we'll both take a compliment in that, maybe. But obviously his answer at that time mustn't have been reflective of the request, because what it has been is my standing up in my community and dealing with the straight goods and dealing with reality. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, the answer has to be no, and sometimes that answer can be yes, but what we do provide is clarity. And it's not always accepted that it is the wanted or desired response from the municipality. No different, as you heard in question period today. Our concerns as a province of Nova Scotia with the Government of Canada on the basis of fairness and equity between our relationship with that Government of Canada. But this province, Mr. Speaker, is not going out and threatening to sue the Government of Canada on an issue-by-issue or a collective about our benefits. This province, through our ministers and through our Premier, are working in our respective roles, whether that's the premiers of this nation, whether it's the First Ministers' Conference, to deal with the deficiencies and the shortcomings that we have as a province and to address those issues that we want all Nova Scotians to benefit from and to have addressed for the mutual benefit of this province. So we do work, but we also work within the context of reality and the numbers we know. And within the CBRM, what we do know with our numbers that have been asked, that we see a total expenditure, including debt servicing related costs, of over $858 million within the CBRM. And some people have questioned with clarity around those numbers, and this government is working towards that. But what we don't do as a government in providing services is divide it by 55 municipalities. We provide services and programs for an entire province. And we don't isolate one region against another. Because the very benefits that we're seeing in the CBRM, when you consider the direct contributions alone for the Department of Health of over $280 million for within the CBRM, you could isolate that, and by the way, it's a very positive number for health delivery services, but you have to take in context the number of Cape Bretoners that receive benefit from medical services, whether it's in the Capital District, whether it's at St. Martha's and Antigonish, because we have other benefits that we derive by being a province and being part of a great province of Nova Scotia. So we that live in the CBRM do want to be a full and equal partner in the province of Nova Scotia, but we do it by recognizing the other inputs we get. For instance, just a prime example, last year, the Minister of Transportation and Public Works had finalized a commitment for $15 million on rebuilding the deck of the Seal Island Bridge. Well, that's in Victoria County, not the CBRM, but I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, the people of the CBRM are benefiting from that investment, no different than the over $11 million in the twinning of the highway and the completion from the north side to Sydney, no different than the investments we're doing for the jobs that are being created, and no different from our ongoing commitment to take the resources and those scarce resources we have and apply them fairly throughout this province. We've listened to small business. We've responded by working with the credit union movement on a loans program. We're seeing and supporting community economic development investment funds so that communities that are responding to deal with their economic issues and seeing, more importantly, addressing the opportunities before them, have a vehicle and mechanism where the province can help facilitate positive growth and outcomes. Mr. Speaker, the CBRM and the citizens that are within it are all participating on these many positive things and are all part of doing that. When I look at the response we had from the users group when we had the railway issue in Cape Breton, Mr. Speaker, people came together. They recognized the problem and they wanted some solutions applied to it, but they wanted to look at the business case, and we continue to work in advance on that. And we continue to look at new opportunities to grow a long-term business case and solution for the railway. No different, Mr. Speaker, than we're working with those that are investing in Sidport through Laurentian Energy to create new opportunities, both in the Sydney area. If you look at the Gardner-Pinfold study that looked at offshore opportunities and saw the Sydney area as marine services and fabrication versus those of the Strait area for supply-based opportunities, the two regions can work collectively and collaboratively for their own mutual benefit, Mr. Speaker, and that is what is happening outside of any of the other banter amongst politicians or levels of government. What's also happening, Mr. Speaker, are people are building the business case, whether that's for the Sydney Airport and the Airport Authority, to maintain the services that are in place there through the flight services station. And what we also see is everything that, excuse me, Mr. Speaker, that the collective efforts of contributors, of citizens that take the obligation and the responsibility and accountability for their actions and indeed for their efforts to make a better community. And while we'll have continuing debate, and I will too within my own community as the only government representative within the CBRM, but I'll fight that good fight. I will have the good debate because I know that the efforts of this government are sincere, they're worthwhile, and they are meaningful to the people of Cape Breton, and one that we will not detract from, and one we will continue to invest in the good people of the CBRM. And this government will stand up, and I, as a member of this government, will stand up in this chamber and be accountable to the New Democratic Party, to the Liberal Party, for my decisions and actions as a member of this government in Cape Breton, no differently than they're being asked to be accountable right now by members of the CBRM for what their decisions may be potentially later in the day. And Mr. Speaker, it's all about balance and it's about focus. And I don't think any party in this legislature would say that they don't have a balanced view of Nova Scotia and a fair view of all regions within this province, and something that we're committed to. We continue our effort and our focus around that. We'll continue to see new dollars invested. And, you know, important for the House to note as well, that when you look at our investment that we have, of the $858 million to the CBRM, that 12% of the population, yet 14% of Nova Scotia's total budget that's allocated outside of other services and complementary services and those that are partners. So, Mr. Speaker, there is a positive relationship. It's one that will continue to build past the challenge of the day, and one that I will not deter in my focus and efforts to work positively and collaboratively wherever possible. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Motion is carried.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would you please call the estimates of the Minister of Community Services?
The estimates of the Minister of Community Services. I'll recognize the Minister of Community Services.
How long are you going to be?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to say that this year we went for a little over 8 hours. It looks like about 8.5 hours on the estimates, and that is a welcome development. Last year it was only 6 hours. The Department of Community Services is a large department. It's a very important department to the more vulnerable people of Nova Scotia, and I want to thank the opposition members for their interest, their questions. It was a good debate. And I also would like to acknowledge the work that was done behind the scenes by their researchers, because I know that they would also depend on them just as I depend on my staff. Specifically, I want to thank the two veterans of estimates from the Department of Community Services. At the end of the estimates yesterday, I was making reference to Clem Henneberry, who has been doing this for more years than he would admit to. And I can tell you Clem understands very well all the things that happen within the department, because everything hooks around the finances, and in order to understand the finances, you have to understand the programs. And clearly, his manager, George Hudson, who has also been a tremendous asset to the department over the years. I would like to acknowledge Kathy McIsaac, who has patiently sat through all this, taking notations up in the gallery. She's our Director of Communications. And these three dedicated staff, dedicated and capable staff, represent a great team at Community Services. So I want to thank the members opposite for their questions. This kind of scrutiny, I think, is a very important part of the democratic process. It's something that provides accountability to taxpayers. I understand this is not done in Ottawa. Perhaps if this was done in Ottawa, we might not have had this blow up in the spring. So you, by virtue of your questions, safeguard the tax dollars and the programs that are there for Nova Scotians. So that is a reflection on your participation in this. It's also a reflection on the process that we have here in Nova Scotia, and a good one. We look forward to another exciting and challenging year at the department, during which we'll be providing services to approximately 165,000 Nova Scotians in various capacities. We'll continue to attempt to improve and enhance our programs and services to make sure they are there when Nova Scotians need them. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, in closing, I am pleased to move Resolution 2, therefore be it resolved that a sum not exceeding $694,145,000 be granted to the Lieutenant Governor to defray expenses in respect of the Department of Community Services pursuant to the estimate, and I so move. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. The request is to move the estimates of the Department of Community Services. Shall the resolution number 2 stand? Agreed. I recognize the we'll just give the minister a moment to assemble his staff. Recognize the Government House Leader.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity. I thought for a moment perhaps the estimates of the Department of Transportation would not be coming before your committee, but we're delighted to be here. On my far left is Greg Penny, who's the Director of Finance in the Department of Transportation, and adjacent to me is Brian Stonehouse, who I'm sure most members know as Deputy Minister of Department of Transportation Public Works, and part of that, of course, he was with Service Nova Scotia. And up in the gallery, we have Brian Gallivan, who's Director of Policy and I've got to look at my Policy and Planning. And we have up there Al McRae, who's the Executive Director of Public Works, and Greg Lust, the Executive Director of Government Services, and Martin Delaney, I'm sure, who's known by most people here, the Executive Director of Highway Operations, and we have on the far right Ross McClellan, who's the Director of Public Affairs, and the gentleman who put my notes together for this afternoon. I have a fairly long opening remarks here, and I may cut a little bit short because I understand that you do want some time available for economic development when I'm completed, so I'll keep this as brief as I can, but it will still be reasonably lengthy. As you know, we have 3 operating divisions within Department of Transportation and Public Works. We have Highways, Public Works, and Government Services, and I'm going to speak to all 3 areas in my opening remarks, as well as Minister responsible for the Insurance Act and Minister responsible for Sydney Steel Corporation Act. I also intend to speak to those areas of responsibilities, and if you have any questions, we can mix them up as we go along. I'm also, as you're aware, the Minister responsible for the Sydney Tar Ponds Agency, and I intend to comment on that agency as well as important things are happening there tomorrow. And I'm also responsible for the Sydney Steel Corporation and Searle, which have been combined now. And John Traves will be in the gallery on occasion if you have any questions with regard to those particular portfolios. Also, and I notice it's not in my remarks, I'm also responsible as the minister, as the leader of the opposition is aware, of the Superintendent of Insurance's office, and I'm sure he will have some questions regarding that. I'd like to first of all start off by sincerely thanking the members of the Department of Transportation for their loyalty during this past year and in years past to keeping our roads in good shape and to doing those things that come along periodically over which we have no control. And I'm speaking about the year just gone by when we had, in the spring, severe flooding. During the latter part of the year, we were struck by Hurricane Juan, and then we were struck, of course, with a massive snowstorm that brought things to a halt in much of the province. They've done an excellent job, and they are appreciated. I'd also like to talk about the strides being taken by my government in the field of transportation investments. These investments are helping turn our roads and bridges around, and they put needed dollars into our transportation system. I'm very proud of these investments because for too long, our roads and bridges were being ignored. During the mid-90s, government spending on transportation was declining. Governments were ignoring our roads, and after a few years, the neglect was beginning to show. In many ways, we are still dealing with that neglect today. Some of the problems we faced in 2004 are a result of delayed investments in the mid to late 1990s. However, I'm very pleased to report that our capital spending is increasing. Once again, this fiscal year, government has increased its investment in the road and bridge network of our province, and for the 5th straight year, our capital spending has gone up. In fact, this year, our capital budget for roads, bridges, and machinery is more than $112 million. Including operating and capital expenditures, government will spend a total of $261 million on Nova Scotia's road network. This is a noteworthy feature, Mr. Chairman, because this investment exceeds by $5 to $6 million the provincial motor fuel taxes in fiscal 0405. Or put it another way, government expects to receive $255 million in provincial gas taxes this fiscal year and expects to expend $261 million on roads and bridges. The results of the government's increased investments are evident. New bridges, new twinned highways, new pavement are making our roads and bridges stronger and providing new opportunities for communities and businesses. I'd like to point out some of the highlights of our recent work. A 3-year, $15 million midlife renovation to the Seal Island Bridge. Yes. Companies from across Nova Scotia completed a substantial renovation of this structure and at the same time allowed tourism and commercial traffic to continue along a very important corridor. I'd also like to mention that the design work on the Seal Island Bridge recently received a Lieutenant Governor's Award for Engineering Design. Mr. Chairman, I'm sure that every member of this House has driven across the Seal Island Bridge and appreciate the value of that bridge. It's a tremendous asset to this province. It is indeed. As a matter of fact, those lights that we've been talking about for some considerable time will be going out to tender this year, I believe. We also completed a new $10 million Margaree Harbour Bridge. This bridge will serve as an important link to the world-famous Cabot Trail, helping to boost tourism as well as local communities and infrastructures. We've continued twinning along Highway 101. It was my good fortune to recently attend an official opening of Highway 101, the twinning piece between Mount Uniacke and Ellis House. This 21-kilometre of highway serves as an important connector and does indeed improve safety. Twinned highways don't stop crashes, but they certainly they do certainly stop the appalling loss of life that we have on dual-lane highways where you have head-on collisions and no shoulders. You're right. Staff are now working on the next section of twinning from Ellis House to Windsor and from Falmouth to Avonport. This project is cost-shared with the federal government as part of the National Highway System and is expected to start this fall. Continued investments in Highway 103. This year, the department expects to expend about $19 million on two sections of Highway 103, one near Barrington and the other near Halifax. This work represents a significant investment in Highway 103 and a significant investment out of our capital budget because, as I'm sure everybody realizes, the Highway 103 is not part of the National Highway System, and therefore it is not cost-shared by the federal government, and so it should be, absolutely. In fact, later on in my remarks I'll come to that because we're going to try and increase the number of highways that we have in the National Highway System to include Highway 103 and also 105 and 107. And anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here. You know, it's one of the nice things about being Minister of Transportation, you've got lots of friends in the House. Twinning of Highway 125, work is continuing on this project with work on the Cox Heath interchange planned for this summer. Most of the money for this project is also coming from the province, but however, there is a portion that will be contributed by the federal government. Twinning of the 104, work is moving forward on twinning the next section of Highway 104 from New Glasgow to Sutherlands River. Clearing of ground to Pine Tree Road is expected to take place this winter. There's been a lot of work and a lot of money spent on the 100 series highways, and sometimes I know members say, well, why don't we fix up the local roads and then fix up the 100 series? Well, we have to concentrate on the 100 series highways because our 100 series highways are in good shape, and it's up to us to keep them in good shape. We know what's happened to our secondary roads because of lack of ongoing maintenance. They've fallen into disrepair. Most of them require rebuilding before repaving. With the 101, we do have to continue to expend money to keep that system going because with no railroads carrying freight in and out of this province of any great extent these days, most of the traffic is on the roads, and certainly the truck traffic now takes a tremendous toll on our highways. We have about 4,100 bridges in this province, and the cost of repairs and replacements of those bridges over the next 10 years is estimated at $560 million. This figure comes from the Department of Transportation and Public Works 10-year need study, which we republished in 2001. The department intends to replace about 200 single-lane steel truss bridges in Nova Scotia. The expected cost of replacing those bridges is about $150 million. As everybody's aware, these are very old bridges. Some of them are well over 100 years old. They are still functional, they are still safe, and I repeat, they are still safe, but however, they do not meet the needs of today's traffic, which is so much faster and so much larger and so much heavier. To begin the program of replacing those steel truss bridges, we're spending $50 million over the next 5 years to replace 66 of them. This is a pretty significant investment, but it's only the beginning. The remaining bridges will have to be replaced, and that is going to have to be a continuing program for the Department of Transportation. As a result of these expenditures, we're seeing better roads and bridges in our rural communities, and this will assist rural-based businesses. Certainly, we are receiving improved feedback back from the public. Our satisfaction levels are going up year after year. Every year that the Department of Transportation for the last, I think, probably 25 years or so, has taken a customer survey to determine the satisfaction of the traveling public with our highways. steadily decreased up until from 1990 forward, and the reason for that was fairly obvious, because we didn't spend money, as I said before, on ongoing maintenance, and the roads just deteriorated. However, that level of satisfaction, which decreased to around about 50% around about the year 1999-2000, has increased steadily since then. And in our last assessment, which was last year in 2003, it was up to 60%, which is a credible advance. Still not good enough, but we're certainly showing some improvement. The department can always improve, and I expect it always will. However, as our investments build and as our transportation network grows stronger, I believe public satisfaction levels will continue to grow. The need to do more with the limited dollars that we receive each year in our transportation budget has never been more urgent. However, the department has taken on that challenge and is looking for better and new and efficient ways to serve Nova Scotians. Our method is by putting operational dollars directly into the local road work through our road improvement money, the RIM program. This year, the department is spending $12.5 million on RIM, which is an increase of $2.5 million over last year. Over the last 4 years, we've put $39 million into the local road network through RIM, and in fact, this year 5 of the RIM program brings the total investment in RIM to $51.5 million. This money, as you know, goes directly into road projects on secondary and local roads, and is divided by region based on the amount of roadway in each particular riding. This money goes towards projects such as small-scale asphalt patching, ditching, graveling, and shoulder work. The feedback from communities has been exceptional. Most of these RIM dollars are tendered, resulting in greater cost efficiencies for taxpayers and first-class work for residents. The thing about RIM is that, first of all, it attracts the smaller contractors into projects such as paving, graveling. Beg your pardon? No. The honourable Leader of the Opposition is probably going to ask me a question on that later, and I'll be happy to answer him. The department is also being asked to be smarter, and here we're using the latest technology to meet the needs of Nova Scotians. Take, for instance, the department's RWIS stations, or Road Weather Information System stations. You've seen these along the sides of the highways. They're a tower with a camera at the top, and embedded in the highway, there's a small little receiver about the size of a hockey puck, which relays information to the radio tower. The devices and sensors accumulate air and ground temperatures and then forward that information directly to Environment Canada. This information comes in the form that enables the staff at our garages to make decisions on salting. And with that information, staff are able to put salt on the road before the ice forms, making our roads safer while requiring the use of less salt to do the same job. These towers also contain cameras, which are used to provide images of highway conditions, and staff can use these cameras to watch weather patterns as they cross the province, and it allows our supervisors to be prepared for rapid changes in the weather. We are, at the present time, I believe, we have 15 or 16 of the RWIS stations. I think it's about 15 or 16. This year we're going to try and get another 9. These are cost shared with the federal government, and we hope this year that we'll have our have a RWIS station installed at the causeway, and I would suggest that that's going to be very important for people in Cape Breton. We already have one, I believe, up in North Sydney. So this will bring our numbers in Cape Breton to 2, but eventually, and probably starting next year, we're going to be going up to 104 to Sydney. These stations, as you know, you can pick them up yourselves on the net, and you can see what the weather's like before you start off. The cameras are a popular feature and are used extensively by the travelling public. The department's website experiences extensive traffic during the summer and winter months as motorists look for weather and road information. Our goal is to improve services and safety to the travelling public, and the cameras are one method by which drivers can learn more about weather conditions in winter and summer. These stations also assist the department with its salt management strategy. This strategy is intended to minimize the harm to the environment from salt. As you're probably aware, that salt has been labeled a toxic substance by Environment Canada, and we've been ordered to cut back on the amount of salt that we use by 25%. One of the ways in which we're doing that is by pre-wetting the salt before we spread it on the roads. If you've ever driven behind a salt truck, you'll see the salt coming out the back and it's bouncing, and most of it's bouncing off the road onto the shoulders. When you put it down pre-wet, it goes down and it stays on the road, and there's no doubt about it that alone, the pre-wetting is going to enable us to substantially decrease the amount of salt that we use, but still achieve the same desired effect from salting. As a part of that strategy, also, I should mention that we are improving our salt domes or our salt sheds. We've had some problems around the province with contamination of sites and leaching into the water table from our salt sheds. We're getting rid of the old salt domes, putting up new environmentally designed salt sheds that will prevent the salt from escaping, and, as I say, getting into the landscape around the shed. Remediation is an important component of the work that goes on at Transportation and Public Works, and the department can point to valuable and successful case histories that the Department of Transportation have been involved in. Five Island Lake is one that I'm sure the member from let's see. Timberley Prospect, I guess, is, where there was a lake there that was badly polluted, and it is now clear. We up in Inverness, the old mine site up there, the old coal mine site, we're remediating that, and we're also doing some work, considerable work at Boat Harbour. That's been ongoing now since about 1994, I think. And it's pointed out as being one of the classic remediation efforts in this country. I also expect that this year, in fact, we have money in our budget to start the demolition of the old Halifax Infirmary, and that's a site that's going to require considerable work in pulling it down. I suggest that we might go in and just blow it up and sell tickets to watch the demolition, but I'm advised that there's so much reclaimable material within the hospital. There's also asbestos, etc., in there, that it will be a rather slow process demolishing it, but it will be started this year, be completed next year. And the result of that, of course, will be a prime piece of downtown real estate that will be available for development adjacent to Spring Garden Road. I'd also like to talk just for a moment on what we've done in the way of renovation of our historic buildings, and this is a very good example, this building. When I first came to this house, and it was a few years ago now, the building was actually black. It was black from the accumulation of soot and other contaminants, airborne contaminants. And there was great to do about, we'd have to sandblast it off, etc. But however, we went about it scientifically, and the Department of Public Works brought some consultants in from the UK to suggest what we could do with this building, because they had, of course, years of experience in renovating buildings in London. And they came here and they did the outside. As you know, a tremendous amount of the sandstone exterior was replaced. The inside was renovated, and we've restored the building back to essentially where it was. And I say essentially because not entirely, back to where it was around about the turn of the century. And this is a gorgeous building. It's one of the finest buildings in Canada, and it certainly would be a tremendous loss if we allowed the building to deteriorate. I should also mention that we're doing some work down in Digby, at the Digby Courthouse, which is an old historic building that which we're doing some exterior work on, and that is certainly another part of the province that has many historic buildings. One of the things that my department requires that all new buildings and new leases to be barrier-free and incorporate the barrier-free design into renovations of existing buildings. We're also exploring ways in which and new opportunities whereby we can meet the government's energy strategy. Our latest steps in this field include energy-efficient building construction, which is resulting in substantial cost saving to government. And this is something that we will continue on in the future as we build more buildings and as we renovate existing buildings. One of the interesting items that we've just recently started is in our own buildings, our own provincial buildings, is the use of fish oil in heating fuel. About 20 government buildings are taking part in this test of a Nova Scotia product. It's a mixture of fuel oil and fish oil. It seems to work very, very well. I'm told that there's only one furnace that we had some problems with originally, but it's working okay now. So this is, I think, shows a determination to do our best to better the environment. Now, speaking of the environment, Mr. Chairman, as you know, there's going to be an announcement tomorrow with regard to the Sydney tar ponds. I first encountered the Sydney tar ponds when I became chairman of management board back in 1982, and my deputy minister, Mr. Byron Anthony, who some of you may or may not remember, gave me a briefing on the Sydney tar ponds, and I learned from him about the problems in Sydney. I never dreamed that it would take 22 odd years before we finally got around to cleaning up that particular mess. It took 22 years, actually, 5 premiers and a similar number of prime ministers for the 3 levels of government to get started. How many mayors? I don't know, but quite a few. The Canadian press recently reported that Canada and Nova Scotia had reached an agreement in principle on a $400 million plan to clean up the Sydney tar ponds and coke ovens. And I guess I can't tell you too much more about it, but the methodology that we're going to be using to clean up the tar ponds and to remediate the coke oven site are not new technologies. They are technologies based on successful application in other parts of Canada and other parts of North America and the world. Because, Mr. Chairman, it is absolutely essential, and I can't repeat it, that we stop talking about the tar ponds and the coke oven site and get on with the job. And the people in Sydney will say, look, we don't care, we don't really care. As long as you've got a plan, as long as you've got a technique that is safe and is proven, get on with it. Just cut out all the chatter and get on with it. And, Mr. Speaker, I believe, honestly believe, that this time something is going to happen. I honestly believe that this year something is going to happen. Well, I'm not going there, so I won't have a shovel up there, but I'm sure that there are other people who will be there tomorrow for the announcement, because indeed, I would suggest for Sydney, this is probably the most important announcement that's been made for many years with regard to those two environmental problems. These areas, Mr. Chairman, when they are remedied, there's no limit to what you can do with them. Particularly the tar ponds, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you've not the tar pond, I should say the coke oven site. I understand that people are already designing a golf course to go there, and it'd be a wonderful location for a downtown golf course in Sydney. All those things are possible, Mr. Chairman. This project can transform Sydney and turn unusable parts into a very, very beautiful part of that great community. In conjunction with the tar ponds, of course, we have the Cisco site, the old Sydney Steel site, and that was been under the management of Cisco and SERL, which stands for the I forget what SERL stands for. Sydney Environmental Remediation Limited. We have wound up SERL now and combined it with Cisco. And as a result of that, we can have one organization which will be responsible for the Cisco site and for the other jobs that SERL has done. It's interesting that SERL has delivered on its commitment to provide opportunities to severed workers to find work on the site of the Sydney Steel. To date, almost 400,000 hours of work at $16.55 per hour has been supplied directly to Cisco's former employees in working on the Cisco site. Tens of thousands of additional hours of labor for former steel workers have been provided by subcontractors. The province has delivered on its commitment to liquidate the assets from the site. We held a very successful auction and sold all of the larger steel-making pieces directly to other buyers. As of today, we have sold all of the marketable pieces of the Cisco plant, and the last few items are presently being removed by a company called Zoom, and they're taking out the arc furnace and the rolling mill. We have demolished over 30 buildings on site, and already over 60% of that planned activity is completed. By the end of this year, over 80% of the projected demolition work will have been completed, and there are also some buildings there which we will do some work on, which will be available for people who wish to establish businesses on the site. We have 5 new private sector tenants on the site that provides employment for 150 local people. The anchor tenant there is PEVL, which is providing a critical infrastructure service that has resulted in approximately 3,000 carloads of coal being shipped on the Cape Breton Railroad. The province, with financial input from Nova Scotia Power, has also made a major investment in the Sydney Ports Access Road, which is now open to commercial traffic and will be open, hopefully, for regular traffic later on this year. Mr. Speaker, that road is a great asset. It connects onto Highway 125 and runs down to the Nova Scotia piers and allows for better and safer traffic flow in and out of the Cisco site. Earlier this year, following the decision to not use the existing incinerator on site for tar ponds cleanup work, the government combined the operations of Sydney Environmental Resources Limited and Cisco, and I said that a moment ago. This will lead to better efficiencies and better coordination of the remediation efforts on site. Finally, as Minister responsible for Cisco, I can say I'm very proud and perhaps most proud that we have managed to live up to our commitments on time and within budget with regard to Sydney Steel site. The management team at site have done their job exceptionally well. This year, the combined budget for Searle and Cisco operations will be about $23 million, and that's an increase of about $8 million for that organization. The reason for that increase is that we'll simply be doing a great deal more work there this year. There will be much more demolition work done to pull down the remaining structures that house the arc furnace and the rolling mill. Our environmental and remediation activity will intensify this year with Phase 3 environmental studies being completed on the areas from the Victoria Road overpass to the Coke Ovens Brook and on the areas around the administration building and north to the mobile shops. This year, environmental management plans will be developed for the high dump and blast furnace areas. These plans will provide the actual cleanup strategies for those sites. Additional environmental remediation activities scheduled and budgeted for this year will include the cleaning and removal of 2.5 million gallon oil tanks, removal of 50,000 kilograms of PCBs, cleaning and removal of about 2 kilometers of pipelines, oil pipelines, and the removal of thousands of kilograms of the remaining industrial chemicals and materials with asbestos. We don't expect to have too much scrap steel this year, something in the order of about 41,000 tons, but we will be continuing with the slag operation with an estimated 100,000 tons being sold of the aggregate. To those of you who are familiar with the site, there is what is called the high dump. It's a Sydney landmark. It's a huge dump where all the slag from the steel mill has been dumped. That dump is now a mine, and we're mining the slag, and we're getting aggregate from that, which has got a very, very high value as aggregate, and it's selling as rapidly as we can mine and crush it. And I think some of it is actually being exported out of the country. I think some of it's going down to the northern United States for as aggregate. Lastly, and I think I'm getting to the end here, I'd like to speak about insurance. As we all know, the rise in insurance rates is an issue that has been experienced across the country. The situation has been especially challenging for Nova Scotians on fixed income, such as seniors, as well as for working families, students, and small business. However, I'm pleased to note that the auto insurance reforms we introduced last fall are showing clear and considerable results. Our insurance amendments have resulted in 277,000 Nova Scotians sharing in over $55 million in rebates to date. The Nova Scotia Insurance Review Board continues to work diligently to implement the statutory requirements it has been charged with under the Insurance Act. Nelson Blackburn is the chair of the board, the review board, and they are up and running, and they will be reporting back to government on November the 1st on the availability of fire, property, casualty, and liability insurance in Nova Scotia, and on the consideration of gender as a rating factor in auto insurance. Public input on those two studies will be sought through public hearings that will take place around the province starting later this month. Through our auto insurance reforms, we have developed a solution that meets the needs of all stakeholders, particularly, of course, the consumers of Nova Scotia. A part of the Department of Transportation and Public Works is the Government Services Division. Government services, as its name suggests, provide common services to government users. Under this umbrella falls everything from postal services to accommodation services to government-wide provision of information technology and telecommunication services. This division also manages accommodations for all departments, boards, agencies, and commissions. They sell surplus land and manage inventory. They also protect our computers from outside attacks. They also manage 100,000 emails that flow in and out of government offices each day. That's $100,000 a day, and I guess there's a lot of spam in that. Under government services, you have the staff who handle government-wide contracts for telecommunications. These are the staff who last year negotiated new tendered agreements for local and long-distance telephone service, as well as data and cell phone service. These contracts will save the MASH sector, that's the municipalities, universities, hospitals, school boards, etc., about $1 million a year, as well as saving about $1 million a year for the government. So for a total saving of about $2 million in our telecommunications side of our operation. The Public Safety Communications Program Office, which is responsible for Trunk Mobile Radio System, or TMR, is also located in the department. This mobile radio communication system, which costs more than $20 million to build, links virtually all emergency services in the province. The system links 5,000 users with over 68 tower sites across the province. It's a first-class system which links police to EMO staff, to volunteer firefighters, and many others. Following Hurricane One, the feedback from national experts at a conference gave this system an enthusiastic vote of confidence. They said Nova Scotia's mobile communication system makes us a leader across North America. This is also the feedback we've received from the Government Technology Exhibition Conference. In 2001, they awarded the Department a National Distinction Award Bronze Medal for the development of our mobile communication system in Nova Scotia. This province also continues to assist volunteer groups with donated radios and free airtime. The department is also working towards a stronger province with our policy decisions and lobbying of the federal government, and this is with respects to the two other sides of the Department of Transportation, and that is the airport and the seaport. We've had our differences with the federal government on both the airport and the seaport. We have been pushing Ottawa to liberalize air access to new carriers to serve Nova Scotia. But most importantly, we've been pushing the government of Canada to approve pre-clearance services at the Halifax International Airport. As you know, if you're in Toronto and you're heading down south, you're pre-cleared by U.S. Customs at Toronto Pearson before you board the aircraft, so at the other end, you're just an in-transit passenger. Halifax is the only major airport in Canada which does not have have pre-clearance. We're the only area of Canada, that is Atlantic Canada, that does not have pre-clearance. We've had endless discussions over the past 3 or 4 years. I think we're finally getting somewhere, and I'm very, very hopeful that perhaps by the end of this year we will have some kind of an agreement with the U.S. Customs Service. We see that would be a great advantage for our trade and passenger traffic out of Halifax. We're also concerned about small airport viability. We have 2 airports, Yarmouth and Sydney, which were built to accommodate commercial traffic, and they've both were very, very successful, but unfortunately, of the last few years, traffic in Yarmouth has declined, and certainly we're doing our best to revitalize that airport. The airport in Sydney is still going strong, but however, that is another small airport that is going to require our continuing attention. And the last thing that I'd like to comment on, Mr. Chairman, and one that I've mentioned over and over again, without knocking the federal government, but nevertheless, I think it's well worthwhile considering that every year we lose $140 million in motor fuel taxes from this province. What we get back is something in the order of about $4 million. And Mr. Chairman, when the 100 series highways were built, it was built on the premise that the federal government would share 50% of the costs of establishing the national highway system, as well as 50% of the ongoing major maintenance on those highways. And Mr. Speaker, to be quite honest, the federal government hasn't lived up to that promise, and we must continue to pursue the federal government to not only cost share on the existing national highway system, but also to include in our national highway system those other important 100 series highways that we have that at the present time are not cost shared. Mr. Chairman, I could go on. I've been skipping pages here, right, left, and center, but I did want to bring those items to the committee's attention, and I look forward to any questions that they may have, and I'm hopeful that I can and the staff can assist me in answering those questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'll recognize the honourable member for Pictou West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the Minister for his rather lengthy address. But it's unfortunate that we're at the end of the estimates here with transportation. I'm sure we could use more than the 4 hours that we have allotted. But nonetheless, I look forward to some questions to you, Mr. Minister, and certainly welcome your staff here today on the floor and in our gallery as well. So I do have a number of questions, so I guess I'm going to get right to them. And I thought perhaps I'd start off where I left off in question period. We were sort of cut off rather abruptly, and having the last question during the time period, I didn't really get the answers perhaps I was looking for. And as you remember, Mr. Minister, that was around toll roads. And I'm just a little unclear, I guess, on what your position or what the government's position is around toll roads. As you know, we do have a toll highway here in this province, and I'm going to come to that shortly. But on future toll roads is really what I'm trying to figure out where your stand is. You've told me here in question period previously that no more toll roads, pretty clear. But then when we attended the bill briefing or the week before last, I believe it was, you said you might allow toll roads if municipalities would initiate it, and so you'd permit that. We've heard from your own government members that perhaps they would like to see a toll road here in HRM. And just yesterday, as I mentioned earlier, the Halifax-Dartmouth Bridge Commission has said they have permission, I guess, from a study, perhaps funded by your government, to allow toll roads. So I'm a little unclear on where we're at with toll roads in Nova Scotia. So I wonder, first of all, if you could clear up, or what is the government's position on toll highways?
Thank you, Member. I'll recognize the Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, I can be pretty clear on this, I think. The province has no intention of building any more toll roads in the foreseeable future. We have one toll road in place. It's been a remarkably successful venture, actually, but however, that is the end of that experiment. The road to which the honourable member is referring, Mr. Chairman, is the Burnside Expressway, which is a proposal, as I understand it, coming forward from a private developer who owns the land that the highway would be built on, and that he had approached, I believe, the municipal government, HRM, with regard to that particular proposal. What I have said with regard to a proposal coming forward from HRM, if HRM comes forward with a proposal for a toll highway within the HRM, then we will give it some consideration. But it's not our intention to build that highway or to do anything to promote it. However, our commitment would have to be, of course, subject to negotiation to provide an interchange at each end of that highway.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member for Pictou West.
So you're saying your government then itself, in and of itself, is not committed to toll roads, but if there's another entity in the province, whether it's private or whether it's a municipality or the Halifax-Dartmouth Bridge Commission, whatever agency, you would allow them then to build toll roads. And I guess in today's Daily News, certainly there was an article there that the Bridge Commission is going to spend some money on a study for the proposed Burnside toll highway. So I guess I know that's not directly under your department, but it's certainly under the auspices of this government. Where's the money coming from for that study to see whether the toll highway would be feasible or not?
Thank you, member. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
All that I know about it, Mr. Chairman, is what I read in the paper this morning in the Daily News, which would indicate that the Bridge Commission is contemplating a study for an interconnect to that toll highway should it be built, and that they were evidently going to fund that study, as I understand it, from their own revenues. The Bridge Commission comes under the Department of Finance, so that question would be better asked of the Minister of Finance. But I can tell you quite truthfully, I don't know anything about it at all. All that I know is that there was a proposal made to the city with regard to that stretch of highway across private land, and I emphasize it's private land, and that if such a request is made by HRM, we would give it due consideration. I'm not saying that we would provide the necessary linkages to the provincial system.
Thank you, Minister. The member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, again, then, I guess just to sum up on this aspect of it is that you're certainly not opposed if a municipality or a private interest is interested in pursuing a toll road anywhere in the province. I'll move on from there then, Mr. Chair, to our toll highway we do have here in Nova Scotia, the Cobequid Pass. And as we know, that corporation has done very, very well. Certainly, tolls are exceeding expectations. The amount of traffic going through that toll booth are well above expectations. I think the report I have here in hand says that the actual project tolling revenues exceed the original projections by 24%. But in spite of that, certainly this year the tolls went up. I think they're $4 now for a car, and I believe it's $3, is it, per axle on commercial vehicles. So I guess my question is, why have tolls increased even though there's been considerably more revenue coming in?
Thank you, member. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In response, the agreement itself contained contractually various stages during that agreement when increases would be made, and it has no tie-in to whether the toll road is in a profit or loss situation. The only advantage that we're getting, I guess we're getting when I say that the province of Nova Scotia is getting from the fact that we are indeed continually increasing those rates every 4 years or so, is that the amortization period for the road has decreased considerably. I think originally it was 35 years. 25? 25 years. And now it is down, I believe, to 15 or 16 years. I can get you the actual numbers for the honourable member, Mr. Chairman, if he would like them. I can get them and deliver them to him tomorrow.
Thank you, Minister. The member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the annual report that I have shows that I guess the original payback was 30 years, and we're into that now by, what, 5, 6 years, is it? When did it? I forget when exactly it started, but based on the revenue that's coming in, it's obvious and it's going to be paid off well before the 30-year period. And I'm just wondering, is it the intention then that at some point, less than 30 years, we're going to be paid off and there'll be no more tolls? Or will it continue for the 30-year period? Or is the extra revenue paying down the mortgage, or is it going to other uses?
Thank you, member. The Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
The decision was made, to the best of my knowledge, about 5 years ago, that at the conclusion of the retirement of the bonds, the toll booths would vanish and the road would be open to the public. I should also mention, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that this has been a successful venture, not only from the point of view that revenues have come in at a greater rate than we had anticipated. Higher traffic was the main reason, but also that the road was built to last that 30 or 35 years of the use of the road. It's been a very good highway from the point of view of maintenance, and we within the corporation itself, that there is funding that is accumulating for ongoing maintenance for the road. So it is kept up to high standards, and it was a high standard when it was originally built.
Thank you, Minister. The member for Pictou West.
Well, I guess, Mr. Minister, my question really was based on the increased projections of revenue. What year or how many of those 30 years before tolls will be done away with completely? And I think it was in 1997 it started, I think, was it? So 30 years would be 2027. But because of the increased revenue, what year do we expect to be completely free of tolls in the Cobequid Pass?
Thank you. Thank you, member. The minister.
I can tell you approximately. I know it's something around about 15 years of remaining, so that would take it to 2019.
Thank you, Minister. The honourable member for Pictou West.
Okay, I'm going to move on, Mr. Chair, to a favorite topic of all rural members, I guess, is the state of our rural roads in Nova Scotia. And as has been stated a number of times in this House and by yourself, Mr. Minister, is that we do have an infrastructure deficit in this province, and it's a huge deficit in relative terms. It's $3.5 billion that has been identified by your department staff, I believe, as the amount of money that we're behind on in our highway infrastructure, highways and bridges in this province. And that's a lot of money, no two ways about it. And it's certainly obvious for anybody that drives around rural Nova Scotia that the roads are crumbling, they're falling apart, and I can give you lots of examples from my riding, and I'm sure you've heard them from almost every member in this House, that the secondary roads are just very, very poor. And constituents are telling myself and other MLAs and yourself, I'm sure, that they're really not getting any better. And they're costing people money. There's car repairs that are piling up for front-end alignments and wheels and rims and mufflers, and on it goes for repairs. And I think I've heard you mention before there's a 10-year plan to address this issue. And if you take that $3.4 billion and divide it out by 10 years, you're about $345 million per year. Now, I haven't seen this 10-year plan, but maybe it's rolling, maybe it's already underway. I know it's been talked about for a number of years, but so I guess I want to ask, first of all, are we into the 10-year plan? And if so, how far along are we, or is it just a hope and a wish that it'll get started at some point? Or we're certainly not up to $345 million in your budget, obviously. And when did the 10-year plan start, and is there a copy available that I could see?
Thank you, Member. The Honourable Minister of Public Works and Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The honourable member raises a very interesting point, because it's one I think that perhaps I'm at fault in not making sure that members did receive a copy of the 10-year plan. I tabled it in the House in 2001 or 2000, one or the other. 2001, I believe, was the year that the 10-year plan came out. I tabled it in the House, and I think I made a ministerial statement at that time. The 10-year plan is not a fixed 10 years. It's 10 years of progression. The first 10-year plan came out in I think it was 1995-96. It was put out by the then Liberal government. In 2001, we revised the. Thank you. In 2001, we revised the original plan and updated it, and it was an ongoing 10 years. I can suggest to you that probably in another 4 or 5 years we'll come out with another 10-year plan. It's just a progression of what we intend to try and achieve over the next 10 years. It certainly is not going to solve that deficit that we have, which is around about, as you say, $3.5 billion. One of our problems, and it's one that's very, very hard to argue, is that highways, in the overall scheme of things, is not considered to be very important. Health is considered to be very, very important. Education is very, very important. Community services is very, very important, and so on. In consequence, our percentage of the total provincial budget has steadily decreased. It was back in the mid-'80s, we were spending about the same amount on capital construction as we're spending today. That was in mid-'80s dollars. At that time, we were getting something in the order of 9 or 10% of the provincial budget was coming to the Department of Transportation. It's gradually decreased so that when we came back into government in 1999, it was down to 4 point something. Since then, it's increased, not anywhere near as rapidly as what I'd like to see it, but now I believe it's up to something like 7. I'm sorry, I'm exaggerating. It's 5.5% of the provincial budget is coming to the Department of Transportation. $112 million a year in capital just doesn't cut it. We need about $200 million a year in capital to adequately maintain what we have. We need about $300 million to make progressive strides to increase the number of more twinned highways, better overpasses, better interchanges, etc., and to do a wholesale job on our rebridging of those rivers and streams that are presently crossed by steel truss bridges. How much chance are we going to have $300 million a year? Not for a while. Can we get $200 million? It may be possible. It may be possible. And hopefully we can work towards that. At the present time, we're increasing our expenditures on capital by about $10 million a year. We can get to $200 million, though, if the feds step up to the plate and give us, on a steady, ongoing basis, a portion of the motor fuel taxes that they cut out of the province every year. If we had assured funding every year, we could come out with a 10-year plan. say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is our plan for the next 10 years. But we don't know because the feds at the present time have an ad hoc arrangements where they come forward with an individual province and work out a transportation agreement with that province and provide 50-50 funding or something along that line. For instance, New Brunswick has received a tremendous infusion of federal money over the past 7, 8, 10 years. Just very recently, about 3 years ago, I think it was, or maybe even just 2 years ago, they received a $400 million agreement with Ottawa. We can only dream about that in Nova Scotia. If we could get something like that, and we could get that funding on a steady basis, well, Mr. Chairman, we could do great things. Unfortunately, we haven't got those kinds of monies available to us, so we have to do the best we can. We have to spend smart. We have to be parsimonious in how much work we do in various parts of the province of each year. So I appreciate the frustration of every member in this House who all, including myself, have roads which are badly potholed. They are in bad shape, and the only answer to them is to rebuild the road and then pave it. So yes, we have a problem.
Thank you, Minister. The member for Pictou West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And no question, we do have a problem. You know, I get calls from constituents saying that their road is deplorable, or their road is atrocious. You know, I don't know what other adjectives I can use, but I could go on. They're very, very poor. And the Minister of Education would know that the road between Scottsburn and Tony River is very poor. I can give you lots of other examples where people are, it's costing them money to drive on those roads because of the cost to fix their vehicles, the cost of distances they have to travel around. It's just some of the roads are just extremely poor. They've crumbled, and some people are saying, well, I'd be better off with a gravel road than with the pavement, and perhaps they're correct in that assumption. But potholes and ruts and grass growing in the middle and cracks across the road, it's just very hard on modern vehicles, and it's costing rural residents a lot of dollars. It's also a safety issue, you know, when people hit a pothole, especially after dark, and they don't see it coming, and the next thing they're off the road, and this happens to cars, it happens to motorcycles, just because of the poor roads that's there. It's also an economic development issue. Some companies are not willing to invest in rural areas because the roads are so poor that they don't want to send their vehicles over those highways. Not too far back, 2 or 3 months back, one of the tourist operators in my riding had an article in the paper. You may have seen Stoneham Chalets at just back of Scottsburn, and the owner there feels that very, very much the roads are costing him money. Tourists are not coming back because of the poor condition of the road, and I'm sure you've heard that from other tourist operators as well. So it's an economic development issue, it's a safety issue, it's a cost issue to residents, and you know, there's no question we need to invest more money in our secondary infrastructure in particular. So you mentioned, Mr. Minister, our neighboring province of New Brunswick has been quite successful in obtaining dollars from the federal government for their highways. I think you mentioned $400 million project on their 100 series highway there. And I'm just wondering why it is, perhaps they've been more successful than this government in funneling those dollars into their highways. And secondly, what efforts has your government initiated with the federal government to get dollars for Nova Scotia? Badly needed dollars.
Thank you, member. The Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Every day, in every way possible, we bring to the attention of the federal Department of Transportation what our needs are and our desires and our willingness to talk to them about a transportation agreement. But I should like to point out, Mr. Chairman, that there's something that's happened in the Department of Transportation federally that is very worrisome. And that is that, number one, their funding now is tied to what is called infrastructure funding. And they come out with an infrastructure fund, a federal funding to provinces in the form of infrastructure funding, which covers such things as environmental projects, and covers such things as water and sewage, all very necessary things and all very worthy, I'm sure. It also covers such things as hockey rinks and arenas and libraries, you name it. They all come under that umbrella of the infrastructure fund. So that we as a Department of Transportation, and this applies to all provinces, now have to be in competition with other users of federal funding arrangements, and we are fighting to get money for a highway, and somebody else is fighting to get money, for instance, to build an arena, and that is not good. What we are encouraging the federal government to do, and at our last meeting of ministers, that was about 3 or 4 months ago, it was pointed out to Minister Tony Valeri that we weren't interested in the continuation of that kind of federal funding. We wanted an established highway funding program that was linked and tied to the amount of motor fuel taxes that they take out of the province every year, and bring that money back to us as a percentage of that total. And it doesn't have to be a huge percentage, but we would then know that, okay, next year we're going to get 10%, we'll say, of the federal taxes, $140 million. We'll get $14 million in cost-shared dollars for us to use on our highways. The advantage of that, Mr. Chairman, is beyond belief. I mean, the present ad hoc arrangements don't work, and certainly this newfound methodology of using infrastructure funding doesn't work. I should also point out that the past Minister of Transportation federally, Mr. Collinette, came from Toronto, and nothing wrong with anybody coming from Toronto. I used to live in Toronto myself once. But the problem is, he had in his mind the need for the Department of Transportation to put in places those things that would improve traffic in large metropolitan areas. So you've got GO trains and buses and ferries and all those things, which he was interested in funding. And unfortunately, much of the money was funded towards those kinds of programs rather than going in to what's the basic need in this country, and that is highways. And it's not only in Nova Scotia. You can go across Canada, and the roads are in bad shape. So yes, we have brought it to the attention of the federal minister. Why has New Brunswick been successful? Well, it might have been the fact that when the Liberal government was in power there, they did a bang-up job. I don't know. I know when the Liberal government was in power in Nova Scotia, nothing very much happened. But anyway, I leave that with you.
Thank you, Minister. The member for Pictou West.
Since 1999, we've had a Conservative government in New Brunswick, the same as here in Nova Scotia, and yet since those years they've accessed us $400 million, and presently our Minister of Transportation federally is from the Ontario area as well, Hamilton, I do believe. But irregardless of that, I certainly think your department's role is to press the federal government as hard as you possibly can, and to get dollars for our transportation infrastructure here in Nova Scotia. Obviously, your counterparts in New Brunswick have come onto some more successful method of trying to allocate dollars from the feds, and they've been successful. But have you talked with your New Brunswick counterparts to see what magic they're using to get many more dollars for their highways in that province than here? So I just ask you that one more time. Have you worked with your New Brunswick counterparts to see what they're using to to get dollars for their highways that might work here in this province.
Thank you, member. Recognize the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, I certainly have. We have regular meetings, actually. The Atlantic ministers get together and discuss matters of mutual concern. I should tell you that the funding arrangement that brought the $400 million into New Brunswick was one that was negotiated back, I think, in about 1998 or something, and just started to trigger through the system just recently. And the first section took the highway from Moncton to Fredericton. I don't know if you've driven that new highway yet. Then the next section, which was part of that original funding, takes from Fredericton through to Rivière-du-Loup. So that was in place quite some time ago. Well, I shouldn't say it was in place quite some time ago, but the arrangements and the agreements were in place back in the 90s. I think that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Minister. The member for Pictou West.
I would encourage you, Mr. Minister, or your department staff to keep in touch with anybody that's successful in allocating more dollars, and whether it's New Brunswick or Saskatchewan or whoever. I know other provinces have done quite well in getting federal allocations for transportation. And certainly encourage you to continue to press the federal government for a fair share of the gas tax. I certainly agree with you that we're not getting our fair share. It's a very, very small percentage of what goes out of this province, and no question that would make a tremendous difference. I want to come now to your particular budget, and your total budget, I believe, for the whole Department of Transportation and Public Works is $241 million, approximately. Now, I heard you mention earlier that you'd spend this year $261 million on Transportation and Public Works, I believe, the whole department, or was it just on highways? I'm not sure. I'd like you to get some clarification on that. And so, first of all, on that, and secondly, can you give us a breakdown on this year's budget estimate of $241 million? What portion of that is for highways, and what portion of that is for public works and other parts of your total department? But just like to see it broken down by, especially for highways and bridges and other parts of your budget.
Thank you, member, for the question, and I'll direct that to the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, actually, I was asked the question the other evening in the House when we were having the late debate about the same type of question, whereby it appears that we are not spending that much money on highways, but the numbers that you're quoting are our operations budget. On top of that, of course, you have to add the capital budget, which is separate. To give you some indication, on highway operations this year, we'll be spending $186,694,000. Government services will be spending $16 million on top of that. Public Works, $30 million. And then we have policy and planning and corporate services and senior management, which comes in at approximately $8 million for a total of $241 million.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Pictou West.
Okay, so your total budget is $241 million, broken down into those four different departments. Highway operations was $186 million. Can you break down further than that $186 million, what portion of that was on maintenance and what portion was on capital?
Thank you for the question. Recognize the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
There is no capital in that in that amount, Mr. Chairman. We work under the tangible capital assets with regard to capital spending, which means it's like we build a school. That school is amortized over a certain number of years, and then during those certain number of years, we make the payments on that capital borrowing. And these assets are depreciated the same as any other asset. Roads, it could be roads, bridges, what have you. The clincher as to what comes under tangible capital assets, however, is where some difficulty occurs. I think the number is right now is 250,000. Well, it's $500,000. Any expenditure under $500,000 goes in as maintenance. Any expenditure over $500,000 is eligible to be considered as a tangible capital asset. Did I confuse the water at all? Okay.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Pictou West.
Okay, I understand that now, Mr. Minister. Then, so I want to ask you about your capital plans, I guess, then, for this fiscal year. And I don't know if it's, again, if it's in your budget book, I'm not sure, but I couldn't seem to see it. But you do some planning for 100 series highways, and you do some planning for secondary roads and for bridges and other capital projects. But maybe we'll start with the 100 series projects. What capital investment will you be making in Nova Scotia this budget year?
Thank you, member. I recognize the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
I know the number that the honourable member is looking for, and I don't know if I can help him directly, but let me tell you that the capital expenditure on highways and bridges, that's exclusive, is $112,227,000, and you'll find that in 1.8 in the estimates book. Also, under that same item of Transportation and Public Works, you'll find another item there of $20,735,000 for buildings and infrastructure. That is the amount that we're spending on courthouses and jails and schools and hospitals and et cetera.
The member from Pictou West.
I found it in the budget book, the $112 million, as you'd mentioned earlier. So is it possible to get a breakdown on the $112 million as far as 100 series and secondary roads and bridges?
I don't think we, just for one moment. Do we have that?
I'd like to recognize the Deputy Premier.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we can get you those numbers, like, for instance, the amount we're spending on 100 series, what we're spending on roads, what we're spending on bridges. I know that our spending on bridges this year is $34.5 million, I believe. I don't know if that's all capital, though. That is, yeah, I'm just being informed, that is capital and operating both, but there's $34.5 million, some of it capital. Obviously, the bridge replacement under the Steel Trust Bridge program and other major bridges that we're replacing, for instance, the one up in your area, that all comes under capital.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Pictou West.
Well, I guess I'll come back to the 100 series highways because that's a little easier to grasp. It's far less of them, but could you just give us a brief outline then what plans there are? I know the 104 highway between Sutherland's River and New Glasgow, you had mentioned earlier, is being under planning. I don't think it's actual construction this year, but there's certainly some of the preliminary work being done. And what about the other 100 series highways in the province? I know the 101, there's some ongoing work, but what about 103 or 105? Or can you just give us an overall view on the 100 series highways plans for this particular budget year?
Thank you, member. Recognize the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
If my memory serves me correctly, I think we're spending approximately $50 million or $60 million, somewhere between $50 and $60 million on 100 series highways this year. $50 to $60 million. A little bit lower than that, so it's in the 40s on the 100 series highways. And of that 40 million, or 40-odd million, and I'll get you the exact number tomorrow, there's $19 million alone of provincial money going into the 103. There's another, I believe it's 4 million going in the 125 this year. There is no large amount of money going on the 101 this year. The money going into the 101 is primarily for grubbing out the route, so it's a fairly minor expenditure. On the 104, we have a piece of work that we're doing up to connect the section that we did last year just in front of Rita's Tea House. There's a section there that we're doing this year, about 5 or 6 kilometers, a very expensive 5 or 6 kilometers of. And we have work on the 103, 102, 101. I think that's about it. As I say, I will get you the exact number, Mr. Chairman. I'll provide that to the member tomorrow.
Thank you, Minister, for the answer, and I'd like to recognize the member from Pictou West.
Okay, I'll look forward to getting that material on the 100 series capital estimates or capital plans, I guess, for this year. I want to ask you then about the secondary roads, and of course we have thousands of miles of secondary roads in this province. I used to know the exact number. I think, was it 26,000 kilometers or something, was it? Or it's quite a large number anyway of secondary roads in this province that both paved and unpaved. Can you give us or share with us roughly what amount of your $112 million will be spent on capital construction on secondary roads in this province, and any specifics you can share with us on that?
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the Minister of Transportation.
I think approximately 50% of our total capital expenditure is on secondary roads and collector roads, and I'll get you that number for tomorrow as well. The capital program is an ongoing program. We, as you know, we get recommendations in from the districts as to what their priorities are. We try and accommodate those priorities. But I can tell you this, at the present time, if you said, what roads do you positively absolutely have to do, you could cover just about every road that we haven't dealt with over the past 3 or 4 years. There's a tremendous number of roads. We have about 23,000 kilometers of roads in this province that the Department of Transportation is responsible for. Of that 23,000, approximately 10,000, I believe, I think it's a little bit less than that, around about 7 are unpaved. Yes, about 7,000 unpaved. One of the things that I always find very, very interesting, and I don't know if other people have the same kind of interest as I do, but is the fact that in Nova Scotia we have a population of about 900,000 people. We have about 23,000 kilometers of road that the Department of Transportation looks after. You go to Ontario, which has about 12 times, or more than that, probably 13 times our population. Much larger province. The provincial Department of Transportation in the province of Ontario, their total road that they look after is 27,000 kilometers. Only about 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers more than we have in this province. And you say, well, that can't be right, but it is right, because in Ontario and in a large number of other provinces, the municipalities are responsible for roads. Unfortunately, or I shouldn't say unfortunately, but how it is, in this province, we are responsible by far for the majority of roads. So that when the federal government talks about we're going to provide money for roads to municipalities, quite frankly, they don't know what the situation is in Nova Scotia, because, for instance, this HRM that we're in right at the present time, the total number of kilometers that HRM look after is about 1,500 kilometers. so that when the feds say, well, we're going to provide a percentage of the federal excise tax on fuel to the municipalities, it's not going to help the roads in Nova Scotia at all, because as I say, the majority are looked after by the province, and only the very, very small minority looked after by the municipalities.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From your remarks then that approximately half of the $112 million capital expenditures will be on the roads, secondary roads themselves, the rest on bridges and 100 series highways. So that half of 112 million is approximately $56 million. And I know from our discussion, I believe last week we had on Opposition Day, we had a bill that we discussed around priorities for roads and fairness for roads and making sure that every area of Nova Scotia is treated fairly and equally, and making sure that the capital is, is spread across the whole province, and that everybody has, is treated with fairness. So of that $56 million, is it possible, Mr. Minister, you can share with me what portion of that capital expenditure on secondary roads will be spent in Pictou County?
I'd like to recognize the Minister of Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, I'll get to that in just a moment. My Director of Finance here is telling me that we actually have 24 million dollars allocated to 100 series highways this year. And so that leaves $82 million, which is split between bridges, interchanges, and secondary roads and collector roads. Now, those are just raw numbers. I'll have more accurate numbers for you tomorrow. Getting back to the prioritizing of roads, as I say, it's very, very difficult to say that one road has got a higher priority than others, because we have roads, for instance, going to an industry. Very, very important to the industry. Nobody else lives on the road, but however, it's essential that road be open year-round to provide road service to that industry. So we have to give a certain element of priority to that. We have other roads that are tourist roads. In the wintertime, they don't get a lot of traffic, but in the summer they get a lot of traffic. For instance, the roads around the Cabot Trail, etc. And then you have other roads which are enablers. They enable people to get to the hospitals, to get to schools, to get to the city, to get to work, and what have you. Highways are, and this is a quote from our new Minister of Transportation federally, are enablers. They enable things to happen. So that when you're allocating funds, you have to be very, very careful that you're getting the maximum buck insofar as the economy is concerned, and then insofar as accommodating the needs of the traveling public. So it's not an easy thing to do to prioritize.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Pictou West with 14 minutes left in turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I realize that it is always a difficult decision to determine which roads are most in need, because as mentioned, they're almost all in need, and some of them are perhaps have a higher priority based on the economic development opportunities or a business on a certain road. For example, the Michelin Road, as we talked about one other day, past the plant at Granton, I know is allocated this year for the rubber asphalt pilot project to see how that's going to work out using conventional and the new method with the rubber asphalt, and that's great to see that. And of course, we're hoping that not only half the road will be done, but the whole road will be done right from Alma to Abercrombie past the Michelin plant. But again, I guess I want to come back to my question. You indicated there might be as much as $82 million allocated for capital construction on secondary roads, 82 or 84 million, I forget, I didn't catch the figure, but But again, can you give us any indication in Pictou County what capital projects will be expended dollar-wise or road-wise at this particular time? If not, can you get it for me on a tomorrow or when it's possible?
Thank you, member, and I'd like to recognize the Minister of Department of Transportation and Public Works.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I must tell the honourable member that I missed the first part of his remarks when that, whatever it was, went by the by the front door, fire engine. Okay, glad Frank is keeping an eye on those things. I can get you the numbers for Pictou County, but I can't get them for you overnight because of the fact that we're still working on the capital program, and the capital program won't be finalized for another, I would think, 3-4 weeks at least. And even then, it isn't finalized because we also have capital programs that we put out to tender in the fall that probably won't get done that year, but are carried forward to the next year. Because we're trying desperately to iron out the level of work that contractors have. If we put out all our tenders at once, then you're going to get perhaps higher tenders than you would if you spread them out. So we're trying to encourage the industry, the construction industry, to keep their workforce even throughout the year. I should also mention, while we're on that subject, that one of the problems that we have in the province is that during the lean years, that was pre 2000,